Today is the 14th of November, 2024, and yesterday we witnessed another historic hearing from the House Oversight and Accountability Committee on unidentified anomalous phenomena. The committee was chaired by Representative Nancy Mace and included participation from various members of the subcommittees. The witnesses included Timothy Gallaudet, a retired Navy Rear Admiral, Lou Elizondo, a Pentagon insider who worked in the ATIP program, Michael Gold, a former NASA administrator who also worked with the Bigelow Aerospace outfit, and Michael Shellenberger, a celebrated journalist who recently published a paper on a government UFO program designated Immaculate Constellation. Now, I intend to give a brief overview of what I think are some of the highlights from the hearing, and this is by no means going to be exhaustive. There was a lot said, and I'm just going to give you my thoughts here and go through some of my notes. But before I get going, I want to let you all know that as you're well aware at this point, I have a members community. And in my members community, we have been going through this book right here, Cydonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars, by the late researcher extraordinaire David Flynn. And this has been really a privilege for me because I've been joined by the late David Flynn's, David passed away in 2012, his twin brother, Mark Flynn. And Mark and I have been breaking down this extraordinary book. Again, Cydonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars. It's a very difficult read. It's extremely technical, but it is also extremely important. In fact, I describe this book as the most consequential book that I have ever read. It played a significant role in forming my own paradigm, especially, let's say, expanding my biblical paradigm. And it took me, I've read through the book 3 times, and it's taken me 3 times to really grasp the magnitude of the information presented in the work. Again, it's a very difficult, very technical work, and we are breaking it down in my members community. I have a book club feature in which we will read particular works, and then we will have discussions about them. And in the case of Cydonia, because it's so important, we've literally been going chapter by chapter. And I'm telling you, this information will blow your mind. It is, as I said earlier, it is some of the most important information that you will ever hear. And we are having a blast going through it in my members community. Also, I am constantly producing new content in the members community. I am producing private briefings. This is one of those briefings. And I am engaging with all of my members in a dedicated social media platform, a private social media platform that is only accessible by members. It's troll-free, and we are having conversations about all kinds of interesting and controversial subjects in there. And I absolutely love this community. This is where I'm spending most of my time. It's a very edifying community. And even though there are disputes and there's some argumentation, it's all very cordial, respectful, mature. Again, this is a troll-free environment. And you're going to see behind-the-scenes content. I'm keeping people up to date on everything I'm doing. And members in my community are going to get first shot at any events that I am hosting. And I've got a couple of more events coming up for 2025. So if you're interested in joining me on expeditions or conferences that I'm hosting, then you need to become a member because members get first shot at the tickets, and these things usually sell out within a week. In addition to all of that, if you're an annual subscriber in my community, you are going to get access to a phenomenal television series that is hitherto unpublished, except for in my members community. And this series is, if I may say so myself, extremely well produced. It's got information that you've probably never seen before. It's an adventure series that features myself, my friend Gary Haven, and our expedition team, and some very interesting discoveries we made in Peru. There are 3 episodes in the series, and it's professionally edited and produced, as I said. It's television grade, and so you're going to get a pre-screening of these 3 episodes, in addition to, again, if you're an annual subscriber, in addition to conferences. My Birthright conference, every session from my Birthright conference, and the last year's, or rather this year's, conference in Costa Rica that I did as a collaboration with the guys from the Blurry Creatures podcast. So you will have access to every session from those conferences and the pre-screening of these films. And it's a significant discount if you sign up for an annual membership. So listen, people sign up, become members of my community, and they stick around because they love the content. And the conversations are so engaging. And like I said, the material especially from the book club sessions that we do, and these are live stream sessions, so I'm interacting with people in the community with their webcams and microphones, and you are not going to hear this information, particularly this information that we're going through right now from the book Sidonia. You are not going to hear this anywhere else. And it's not really for public consumption because it's very deep, it's very technical, so if you're interested in getting into these topics, join my members community at the alberinoanalysis.com. The alberinoanalysis.com. You can find a link in the description. I hope you guys join. We're having a great time in there. The community is expanding exponentially. And as I said, I've got some events that are coming up that I'm going to be announcing, one of them this month, and my members are going to get first crack at tickets to those events. So if you've been on the fence about this, believe me, you will not regret it. I'm sure that members in my community will chime in on this video and tell you how great it is. I'm really having a blast in there, and I'm spending a lot of my time creating content for that community. But let's get back to the topic at hand, which, again, I am going to give you some of my thoughts. I watched the committee presentation yesterday on unidentified anomalous phenomena, exposing the truth. And I'll say right off the bat that I think that it was beneficial. I think that it was, to some extent, a little bit disappointing. But overall, I think it was beneficial. And there were some very important revelations. I know that the UFO community was perhaps expecting something more explosive or as explosive as the last committee in which we heard the testimony from David Grush. We did not get that level of, let's say, disclosure in this committee hearing. But there were some very important points made. So let's go through those. First and foremost, I think that the committee was probably intended to revolve around the revelations in the Immaculate Constellation report that was, again, published by Shellenberger. In short, the Immaculate Constellation report alleges that, according to a whistleblower, quote, the executive branch has been managing UAP NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades, end quote. Well, excuse my French, but no shit. I mean, those of us who have been investigating this topic for many years know this to be a fact. And this really is nothing new. It's very nice to hear it said publicly in a congressional hearing, in the setting of a congressional hearing. And I think that every ufologist worth his salt would confirm that this is true and has been known and has been confirmed to be true. Again, the executive branch has been managing UAP, NHI, non-human intelligence issues without congressional knowledge for decades. And again, I'm glad that Shellenberger gave the report submitted the report to Congress and has made it public. You can go on the government's own websites and read the report. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time breaking down the allegations in the report. Again, this is just Ufology 101. And it's not really going to cover any new territory, but it was useful. It's useful to have in the public, in the congressional, submitted officially to Congress. And I think it's very good that it's being publicized. This information is being publicized. I was both disappointed and also somewhat elated during this hearing as I was sitting here listening to it live yesterday. Disappointed that we didn't get the Grush level revelations, but also elated that we did hear some information that confirmed some very specific details that those of us in the UFO community, UFO researchers, have been wanting to get confirmation on. And I'll say that I believe that I was particularly impressed with Lou Elizondo. I thought he performed very well. And I felt like he wanted to reveal more information, but was perhaps not asked the right questions. He was asked a lot of good questions, but I feel like he could have been asked some more direct questions about particular topics, and we would have learned more from Lou. I feel like he was ready and willing to answer as much as he could. Now, of course, Elizondo has signed NDAs, and he is very careful about what he says. He's been cleared to release certain information, but then also told not to talk about particular details. And so that has to be understood, that he's not going to break his NDA. He doesn't want to bring that trouble down on himself or his family, which is understandable. In his opening statement, Elizondo, he declared definitively that UAPs are non-human and that there is an arms race underway to recover and reverse engineer them, an international arms race. He also said that the deep state is hiding the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. That's a direct quote from his opening statement. I thought it was a very strong opening statement by Elizondo. You can go back and listen to the hearing if you didn't watch it live. It was a very strong opening statement. And again, I believe that Elizondo was there in good faith. I do not believe, as so many of you do, that Elizondo is a deep state plant or a disinfo operative. I believe that he is sincere personally. I believe that he is sincere and he is revealing as much as he can without going to jail. I mean, basically that's, or at least reaping the consequences of breaking those NDAs. Shellenberger, in his opening statement, he stated that the government is restricting, and I found this to be quite interesting, it has been restricting more information since the leaks, since those pivotal leaks in 2017. And of course, we're talking about the leaks, those now famous New York Times articles in which we learned about the Nimitz incident, the Go Fast gimbal, and that's really what kicked all of this off. Elizondo confirmed once again that the crash retrieval programs exist. And again, this is nothing new to ufologists, but it was nice to hear Elizondo very enthusiastically confirm that those programs exist. And that is an affirmation of Grush's testimony. Because remember what we're talking about here. As I always say, we're way beyond, at this point in time, we're way beyond lights in the sky and are UFOs real? We're way beyond that point in the public discourse. Really what these hearings are about are crash retrievals and alien bodies. And that was apparent, again, in the hearing. That topic came up, and it was actually central to the last hearing, and it came up quite a few times in this hearing. And it was nice to hear Elizondo confirm the legacy crash retrieval programs, the existence of those programs. Now, I found that, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there seemed to be a reticence by Elizondo and perhaps even the Admiral in regard to affirming the involvement of private aerospace contractors. Even Shellenberger was reticent to confirm the involvement of these private companies. And that strikes me as odd. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm wondering if it has to do with lawsuits. I'm wondering if it has to do with the fact that some of the aggressive repression of UFO disclosure actually comes from the aerospace defense contractors, and specifically from the private security firms that they contract with, or even their own security apparatuses. And if you know anything about the history of the government cover-up of UFOs, you'll know that these private security contractors can be very, very aggressive. Very aggressive if you try and get close to these aerospace installations, such as Area 51 and others, and I believe have been involved in, let's say, some very nefarious activities. And I don't know if that's the reason why these guys are hesitant to affirm the involvement of these private aerospace companies, but for whatever reason, they did not want to name names. They did not want to discuss the involvement of these aerospace contractors, which, again, I found to be a bit baffling. Elizondo revealed that he was told by individuals in the Defense Department that he absolutely could not talk about crash retrievals. He told the congressman that he was willing to have that discussion in a skiff, in a private, in a more in a private environment, and every time any kind of details involving crash retrievals were brought up, that was Elizondo's response. He would be happy to provide that information to them in a private setting or in a skiff. That's pretty much an affirmation of whatever the questions were. At least that he has information on crash retrievals. I don't know if the congressmen have taken him up on that offer, and I think that has to be approved. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the Defense Department has to approve the skiff, to approve the private disclosures to Congress. But Elizondo is doing everything he can to signal that, yes, crash retrievals are real, basically affirming, as I said, the testimony of David Grush in the last hearing. Admiral Gallaudet said that the government does not want to release UFO-related videos because, quote, it reveals weaknesses in our ability to monitor and control our airspace. And I absolutely agree with that assessment. This is one of the main reasons why the government does not want to reveal the alien presence, because we can't control it. We cannot. We have no defense mechanism, adequate defense mechanism in place to hinder or inhibit these advanced aerospace craft, and I would say non-human advanced aerospace craft, from interfering with some of our most sensitive military assets, like our nukes, from even in some cases harassing our defense assets, such as our battleships, our aircraft carriers, and I think we found out as well during this hearing, our nuclear subs, our most sensitive military assets. We have no way to stop these craft from monitoring what we're doing, and in a couple of incidents that have happened over the years, even deactivating our nukes. The Defense Department is never going to publicize a threat for which we have no defense. It doesn't make any sense to some extent for the Defense Department to announce that, yes, UFOs are real, they pose a national security threat, but we have no defense. We have no way to inhibit the perhaps hostile activity of these craft. That's not something the Defense Department is going to do. And that's one of the reasons, and it's just one of many, one of the reasons why this process is so difficult, this process of trying to squeeze information out of the government. Again, in the words of Admiral Gallaudet, it reveals weaknesses in our ability to monitor and control our airspace. Absolutely. Now, I think one of the most explosive disclosures from the hearing came from Admiral Gallaudet, where he confirmed that AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, is a DoD counter-offensive operation created to discredit and discourage further congressional inquiry into the matter of UFOs and especially crash retrievals and alien bodies. And I've been saying this since the creation of AARO, that it's a dog and pony show at best, much like NASA. At worst, it is a disinfo operation, again, designed to discredit and discourage especially further congressional inquiry. And I know that to be a fact, by the way. Full disclosure, I have been interfacing with certain congressmen from the UAP hearings and the UAP caucus, and they've told me things about AARO that confirm that AARO is not a good faith investigative body. In fact, Gallaudet, he again revealed some surprising information here in regard to AARO. He said the following, quote, "Earlier this year, I met with the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and what I thought would be a 90-minute meeting just to meet with leadership turned out to be an hours-long influence operation on me. They attempted to convince me of the validity of the very flawed and error-ridden historical records report. In addition, they tried to have me question very valid UAP reports like the Tic Tac incident, even stating possibly that the Tic Tac was American technology. And they also cast discredit on various UAP whistleblowers and witnesses to question their validity and credibility," end quote. That's explosive, because what that demonstrates is that AARO, instead of investigating trying to get to the bottom of UAP, they were operating as a disinfo arm of the DOD, even trying to strong arm Admiral Gallaudet into admitting that the Tic Tac incident, that the Tic Tac technology was American technology. I find that to be quite remarkable. I mean, this rebuffs the theory that has become so popular, especially on UFO X, formerly known as UFO Twitter, that the government wants us to believe that all UFOs are aliens. You know, this is this is a prevailing narrative in certain groups, that this is the government, that these hearings are just the government trying to convince us that UFOs are aliens and they constitute a national security threat, and Lou Elizondo is a disinfo operator, and that they're setting us up for Project Bluebeam, right? They want us to think that aliens are going to be invading Earth. Well, if that's your theory, you really have a problem here, because apparently the All Domain Resolution Office was attempting to strong-arm Admiral Gallaudet into confessing the opposite of that. Namely, that no, this is not non-human technology. This is not alien technology that we've witnessed in some of the more remarkable incidents, such as Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast. No, this is American technology. You need to admit, Admiral Gallaudet, that isn't this just American technology? I mean, why would they do that? Why would they do that? And my answer is, and this is what I've always believed, that in fact, the government wants us to believe. And when I say the government, of course, I'm referring to what's commonly known as the deep state, which I have denominated as the dumb state, referencing the deep underground military installations. The government wants us to believe that this is secret technology developed by the United States military and aerospace contractors. And yes, some of it is. There's no question about it. Some of it is hybridized craft. But what I think is evident here from Gallaudet's testimony is that what they really don't want us to believe, what they're really trying to discourage, is the notion that these craft have anything to do with aliens or non-human intelligence. That's what they don't want. So again, this flies in the face of this popular notion that all these hearings and all of these efforts by Congress are it's all just different disinformation pushing the so-called Bluebeam operation of a fake alien invasion and a fake national security threat. No, I do not believe that is true. The last thing that the government wants to talk about are crash retrievals and alien bodies. That's the last thing they want to talk about. And I know from some insider information that Congress is just like Admiral Gallaudet. There was an attempt to strong arm members of Congress into admitting that the phenomenon, let's say, does not constitute a non-human presence. Let's put it in those terms. Okay? So, interestingly enough, Arrow was never given, and Arrow is the DoD's own research organization, was never given access to the Tic Tac files, Gimbal or Go Fast. They were never given access to those. to that material. There was a particular moment in the hearing in which one of the congressmen asked the witnesses what they believed the phenomenon was. And, what are UAP? And Gallaudet answered definitively that he believes that UAP constitute a non-human higher intelligence. And Elizondo confirmed that that was his opinion as well. So Gallaudet and Elizondo absolutely believe that this phenomenon, at least much of it, constitutes a non-human higher intelligence. I 100% agree with that assessment. And that, of course, conforms to what the other whistleblowers and witnesses have said, including Grush and Fravor and the others. They are repeatedly saying and maintaining that the UAP phenomenon, or again, at least much of it, constitutes a non-human or alien intelligence, that it is an alien phenomenon. And whether or not that word alien means from Mars or from some other place in the universe, or simply a non-human race, it's the same idea. Could be crypto-terrestrial, could be extraterrestrial, could be interdimensional, but the fact is that this technology is non-human. And I will assert that that is a fact. That is a fact. There is also a confirmation of an incident that certain individuals in the UFO community have been trying to confirm for a while now, including my friend Richard Dolan. And this incident involved an attempt to transfer alien technology from Lockheed Martin over to the Bigelow Aerospace Company, and that this transfer was requested and was going to go through, but was suddenly blocked by the CIA. And there's been some reporting on this, some very good reporting on this story. And this is something that we've wanted to know. Is this true? Can this be confirmed? And yesterday, Elizondo confirmed this, that in fact this happened. So again, the Bigelow Aerospace Company was requesting a transfer of alien technology, whatever that means, from Lockheed Martin, but that transfer was blocked by the CIA. And this revelation resulted from Representative Eric Burleson's line of questioning. And so that, I think, is very useful to know. Very important to know that the CIA interfered and blocked that transfer of alien technology, specifically alien technology, okay? Gallaudet expressed his belief that the universe is filled with advanced higher order beings. Mr. Gold, again, the former NASA administrator, he thinks, interestingly enough, he thinks that ET might be artificial intelligence or some kind of machine. Very interesting. I think there's probably some truth to that. Elizondo confirmed that UAPs are especially interested in our nuclear capabilities, our nuclear weapons, our nuclear installations, submarines, and so forth. That is, in fact, a reality, which, of course, we've known for a long time, but it was nice to hear that confirmed. Now, I will say that there So some of these things are very important. I think some of these revelations do advance the cause of UFO disclosure, but I think there was a lot of missed opportunities. I'll give you one example. Representative Burleson asked Elizondo, and I think this was a very important question to ask to confirm Grush's testimony. He asked Elizondo if alien bodies have been recovered. And Elizondo replied, quote, "It was discussed quite a bit at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time. In fact, before I was even born," end quote. Roswell, anyone? I mean, the fact that they were discussing, according to Lou, that they were discussing the recovery of alien bodies, biologics, at the Pentagon, and that they were discussing the recovery of these bodies in a context of decades ago, I would have, were I asking the questions, I would have dug into that for sure. I would have asked if he was referring to Roswell or any of the other incidents in which alien bodies were recovered from UFO crash sites, or at least alleged to have been recovered. I think that would have been it would have been a tremendous opportunity to see if we could get some confirmation of the Roswell incident. And probably, in my mind, that was probably one of the incidents that was being discussed at the Pentagon. In an affirmative in an affirmative context. In other words, the way that Elizondo described this was that the reality of the recovery of alien bodies was being discussed at the Pentagon. So, again, that was quite intriguing to me to hear Lou say that. I do think that after contemplating this last night, of course, I was disappointed that we didn't get the bombshells from, the equivalent bombshells from the last hearing. But overall, I do think it was a net gain. I do think that this hearing was a net gain. It did draw more attention to the topic. Shellenberger, his report, as I said in the beginning, the Immaculate Constellation report is important. I didn't really hear anything from him that was surprising or new, but it's important to have that in. It's important to have the Immaculate Constellation in the public forum and in the awareness of Congress. And I'm really not sure why. Well, let me rephrase that. Michael Gold, I think we could have got a lot more out of him if there were very specific questions directed to him. So for the most part, I think his testimony was just a waste of time, literally a waste of time. I would have much rather heard more questions directed at Elizondo and Gallaudet. But he added nothing to the conversation. I suppose there's some worth in having you might think of him as a representative of NASA sitting there. Okay, but he really made, and I found this to be quite comical, he really made an absurd declaration, a couple of absurd declarations. He said at one point, and I think he said, NASA is a paradigm of transparency. And I think what he meant to say was a paragon. And maybe he did. I didn't catch if he said paradigm or paragon. Either way, the implication is the same and is equally absurd. NASA is a paragon or a paradigm of transparency. I mean, did he really utter those words in public at a hearing? I mean, everyone knows that NASA is the antithesis of a paradigm or paragon of transparency. NASA has been known to cover up, airbrush out particular elements of their footage and photos that are inconvenient, let's say, to their current narrative. And everyone knows this. Nobody trusts NASA. And it's ridiculous that he would make such an assertion with such conviction. And furthermore, it's ridiculous that nobody challenged him on that, because I certainly would have. I certainly would have. In fact, I had a list of questions that I compiled that I would have asked these witnesses were I sitting there in the place of the congressman. And I'll go through some of these. And again, full disclosure, I have been acting, you might say, in an advisory role to one of the congressmen. And I did submit some of these questions, and some of them were asked. But they were truncated, but they were asked. And these would have been my questions if I were given the opportunity to engage with these individuals. Now, I really wouldn't have had any questions for Shellenberger. I think Shellenberger did an excellent job, and his report is very well written. But I would have directed these questions to the Admiral Gallaudet, Elizondo, and Mr. Gold. So here are 7 questions directed to those 3 that I would have asked. Number 1, and I would have asked them in this way, and by the way, these questions are designed to elicit a yes or no response, because if you get a yes response, you can dig in further to the question. You can follow up with other inquiries, but even just a yes or no confirmation would have been helpful for these questions, and I would have rapid fired them at these guys. And to her credit, Mace did actually rapid fire some of these questions. Not exactly these questions I submitted, but basically the same questions. Number 1, does any branch of the United States government or defense contractors, aerospace and otherwise, and that's very important, possess technology derived from a non-human source? Yes or no? Does any branch of the United States military or defense contractors, aerospace and otherwise, employ exotic materials of non-human or non-terrestrial origin in any application, including aircraft and watercraft? Very important question there. Number 3, has the United States government or defense contractors made new breakthroughs in physics that are currently undisclosed to the general public, including at the university level? Now, probably the only one who would have answered this question or would have been able to answer this question would have been Elizondo, and I think his answer would have been affirmative. Number 4, are you aware of any evidence or indication that the United States military or defense contractors have recovered craft of non-human origin? Of course, that question was answered. And then A, if yes, were there non-human entities associated with these craft? Again, that question was asked. And B, if yes, were the non-human entities recovered alive? I would like to know. Number 5, are you aware of any evidence or indication of an undisclosed space program operating with unconventional technology? Inquiring minds would like to know, especially of Mr. Gold, again, who not only worked with NASA, but also the Bigelow Aerospace Company. Number 6, are you aware of any evidence or indication that personnel working for the United States military or aerospace defense contractors are operating off-planet? I would just like a yes or no, especially from Elizondo and Gold. Gold probably would have no knowledge of this, but maybe Gallaudet would have heard rumors. Even if they said, well, we've heard rumors that maybe that's true, that would have been, I think, very valuable information. Number 7, are you aware of any evidence or indication that the United States government or aerospace contractors have made contact with a non-human or extraterrestrial presence on Earth? Now, you'll notice I'm including aerospace contractors here in almost all of my questions, because the United States government and military can claim and have claimed plausible deniability for information under the purview of private companies. That's the shell game here. And I'm sure you're all aware of this. This is one of the main reasons why the military likes to work with these defense contractors, because they can claim plausible deniability. And also you can't FOIA these private contracting companies, at least in certain circumstances. They're private companies. So you really have to include, especially when you're talking to a guy like Elizondo, who I think, again, he's waiting for the right questions to be asked, and he's not going to advance information willingly because of the NDAs, but he can intimate that certain things may be true, and that's enough, I think, for us to draw some conclusions. Now, I have some very specific questions that I would have posed to Mr. Gold. And I think this was a big missed opportunity. I would have grilled him with some questions. Again, Mr. Gold, former NASA administrator. Here's some questions I would have posed. Number 1, in 2022, NASA's UAP study team concluded that there is no evidence to suggest that UAPs have an alien or extraterrestrial origin. Do you concur with this assessment, Mr. Gold? Now, I think Mr. Gold was a part of that study team. And frankly, I believe that study team was being dishonest. I don't believe for 1 minute that NASA does not have any evidence to suggest that UAPs might constitute an alien or non-human presence. Number 2, does NASA have unpublished footage or photos of UAPs? Hello, why did we ask Mr. Gold this question? If yes, why has NASA not released this material to the public? What a missed opportunity. Number 3, does NASA have evidence of a non-human presence on the moon? Remember, this guy is under oath here. He's sworn to tell the truth, or he's supposed to be sworn to tell the truth. Now, he may not know the answer to that question, but if he does, you might see him squirm a little bit were these questions to be asked. Number 4, several NASA astronauts have claimed to have encountered UAP during missions in space. Does NASA have any evidence of these encounters? My God, I wish somebody would have asked him that. Number 5, has NASA discovered life on Mars, microbial or otherwise, that it has not disclosed to the public? And number 6, has NASA discovered artificial structures on Mars or the moon that it has not disclosed to the public? I mean, you could have rapid-fired these questions at Mr. Gold, and even if his answers were, I don't know, or I can't say, or no, they certainly would have been worth asking. And it just baffles me that nobody asked any of these questions. And instead, we allowed this man to just sit there and grandstand and basically run a free advertising campaign for NASA. And even, as I said earlier, make the absolutely absurd declaration that NASA is a paragon of transparency. I certainly would not have let him get away with that statement. So those are the questions I would have asked. Some of those questions were asked, although they were truncated. Some of those questions were asked by Nancy Mace. Some of those questions were asked by Eric Burleson, and in one fashion or another. But I really liked how Nancy Mace started her line of questioning with rapid fire questions. And again, I think she did a great job, because just getting a yes or no, especially from Elizondo and Gallaudet, is worth a lot to researchers in this community. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the hearing. Again, overall, I think it wasn't a nothing burger. I think it was a slight advancement of the disclosure narrative, or let's say of the disclosure effort. And I commend Nancy Mace and the other congressmen on the committee for their willingness to continue to engage this topic at the congressional level. And yes, there was some grandstanding, but overall, I think that it was an important hearing. It's not going to get as much attention as the first one. The allegations were not as explosive, but I think, as you've seen here in my talking points and my notes, there were some very important revelations. So we should not overlook those revelations. And I think going forward, we should definitely not take Arrow seriously. Please. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office is a disinfo operation. Pentagon-funded disinfo operation. It's not even just a dog and pony show at this point. It is actively attempting to discourage and dissuade further congressional inquiry into crash retrievals and alien bodies. Full stop. So those are my thoughts. I want to thank you guys for your attention. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts of your own. Feel free to express them in the comments. I'm looking forward to further hearings. I think there probably will be at least one more. It's all going to depend on the quality of whistleblowers that come forward. Now, I will add as a final thought that I think that the legislation being advanced by Representative Tim Burchett that is designed to protect whistleblowers, should they come forward with more information related to this topic, is absolutely essential. That is essential, okay? That whistleblower protection legislation is precisely what needs to happen at the congressional level if we are going to get the kind of testimony that I want to see, that I want to hear, testimony from engineers who have been working in the special access programs, who have had hands on the technology. Bob Lazar level testimony. That's what we need at this point. That's what we need. And for my part, I've been encouraging the congressmen to do just that, to draft legislation. Hopefully it can get passed that provides protection not only for their careers, these individuals working on in these special access programs or who have worked in them, but to protect their lives and the lives of their families, to shield them from harassment precisely from the security apparatus working with these aerospace companies, and also from government retribution. Very important. That's essential, and I'm glad to see Congressman Burchett advancing that legislation. Let's hope it passes. Okay, guys, come join me in my members community. You will not be disappointed with the content over there. There's a lot of, as I said, interesting, controversial topics that I can discuss in that private setting, in my members community that I simply cannot talk about on YouTube. I mean, I get into some political things. I talk about subjects that would probably draw strikes on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So it's an uncensored environment for me, which is a lot of fun. And also I dig into some very, very controversial theological topics that I hesitate to do here on YouTube because of the firestorm of dispute that they would ignite. I'd rather do that in a private setting. So you can consider my members community my skiff, okay? That's the environment in which I feel free to address some of those topics. Again, if you're interested in joining my community, you can get the link in the description of this video, or you can go to the alberinoanalysis.com. Now, I am going to continue this video in my members community. I've got some more thoughts, some things I want to talk about, but that is going to be reserved for my members. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not a member in my community, you can go sign up and become a member to access the rest of this video. If you are a member and you're watching this on YouTube, go over to the community and watch this video there, and you will get the rest of my thoughts on this topic.